The cube is part of the palm sander soft sculpture. Before attaching it to the other pieces of the soft sculpture, it is sewn together and stuffed. Later it will be attached to the other forms. First, the walls of the cube are sewn by folding the long piece of fabric with right sides together in half and sewing along the edge to make a circular form. As with all seams on the soft sculpture, the seam is sewn 1/4 inch in from the edge of the fabric. The first stitch begins 1/4 inch up from the bottom of the fabric and ends 1/4 inch down from the top of the fabric. This allows for seam allowance on the bottom and top of the fabric piece to attach this form to the next form. The squares with rounded corners are sewn to the top and bottom of the fabric that was sewn together to make the walls. First, the square is positioned on top of the sewn sides with the right side down facing inward, leaving the drawn lines on the wrong side facing out. The sewn seam is placed in the corner of the square. Straight pins are used to keep the square in position. The pins are inserted parallel to the edge of the fabric, with the tip of the pins all facing the same direction. This is continued all the way around the square to make sure the measurements of the square line up to the measurements of the sides. Also, this helps prevent slipping of either piece of fabric when the fabric is sewn together. Sew the side wall and the square together all the way around one side of the cube using a backstitch. As the edges are sewn together, the straight pins can be removed and placed into the pincushion. One side of the cube, the square, should be sewn completely onto the sides of the cube. The other side of the cube, the square, should be sewn on mostly except for a 3-inch area along the straight edge of one of the squares. This should be left open to right side out the fabric cube and to stuff the cube. It will be sewn up later with a blind stitch. The cube is completely sewn except for a small area along the edge of one of the squares. The side walls are sewn and the bottom square and the top are sewn with one gap that can open up to right side out the fabric. Before right side outing the fabric, small scissors are used to clip the corners 1/8 of an inch into the fabric. It is important not to clip all the way into the stitched line. This allows the fabric to ease slightly on the curve, adding less bulk to the corners when the fabric is right side outed. The edges of the fabric along the open area are folded back and pressed tightly with fingers. This makes a crease for sewing the blind stitch. The inside of the cube is pulled out through the hole to right side out the fabric. All of the sewn lines will be inside of the sculpture. This should be done gently as to not tear out the seams that have been stitched. Once the fabric is right side outed, a finger is used inside to push out all of the seams and the corners. Now the soft sculpture is ready to be stuffed. Wool batting is used to stuff the soft sculpture. First, the batting is pulled off and separated to fluff the batting up. As it is inserted into the hole of the soft sculpture, the batting is pushed to all edges of the interior of the soft sculpture. A blind stitch is used to sew the soft sculpture together. First, a threaded needle goes from the inside of the sculpture to the outside, about 1/2 inch from where the last seam ended. This overlaps the previous seam, adding strength to this closure. Both edges of the side and the top square are pinched together to easily sew through the fabric. The needle sews from right to left, horizontally into one piece of cloth. Then the thread goes down directly to the next piece of thread, sewing from right to left on the lower piece of cloth. The needle goes directly above where the needle exited on the bottom piece of cloth, sewing on the top piece of cloth from right to left. Each stitch should be approximately 1/4 of an inch. The pattern of sewing is right to left, down, right to left, up, right to left, down, right to left, up. Pinching the two pieces of cloth together creates a lip of the fabric. It is best to imagine the thread and needle are going through a channel created by the pinched fabric. After the hole is closed with the blind stitch, a few extra stitches should be taken into the previously stitched line. This adds more strength to the stitch. To end the stitch, the fabric should be sewn slightly past the previously sewn line to the left, and then again to the right, and then again to the left, similar to the way the other lines were secured.